All right, guys, welcome back. We are watching Tsukimonogatari episode 3, Yotsugi Doll, part 3. I can't believe this arc is only 4 episodes long. It feels like with the stuff we set up, I don't know. I don't know how it's gonna wrap it all up, but who knows? I guess we'll figure that out. Last time, well, we learned more about Aragi's condition, turning into a vampire. Well, how is the way Ononoki put it? Independently from Shinobu, which I believe makes a lot of sense thematically. Makes a lot of sense more with like the Araragi like little monologue at the beginning of the first episode too. Him saying it's like the end of Araragi Kiyomi, all of that. I don't know. I think this arc is probably, I don't know. It's really good so far, that's for sure. Like for Araragi as a character, I'm very interested to see what the conclusion of this arc will be, I suppose. Um Other than that, well, I don't know. We kind of left off just in the middle of their conversation. So, who knows where we're going from here, I guess. So, we're watching episode 3. You can line your own copy up with this if you want to. We are starting in 3, 2, 1. Am my volume right? Turn that up. There we go. Vampire. No way to go back. Yeah, that's how it works. Although, well, in a way. Hmm. He is changed. Interesting. Past 6 months. What does he think changed in just the past 6 months? Atonement. Compensation. Like he doesn't deserve it, right? Mm-hmm. Interesting. Very illuminating about how he views it, right? Ooh. Okay, okay. Hmm. Feels like the status quo has been rapidly changing as the story goes on. Ooh. No longer rely on your vampire powers. Okay. Interesting. God, I feel like this is really gonna make me have to think a lot about my whole interpretation of all of this with the idea of vampirism, right? Hmm. Oh, I love this opening so much. I don't know, I'm just really thinking about him not relying on his vampire powers anymore. At least the way he views it, right? That I think that's very telling. Him saying that he should have to atone or he should have to pay compensation for it. That makes a lot of sense. Because he doesn't view it as something he should like be allowed to rely on, you know? He thinks there should be some punishment for it. And like that is why there is one, right? That's why he's turning into a vampire, right? Because he views it like that, right? What does it mean though for him to not rely on his vampire powers anymore, you know? I kind of have an idea, I suppose. Part 3. Oh, God. The moon, huh? Nebula looks so cool. Right, right. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would assume the real problem would be him using, yeah, relying on them in some way. Oh. It depends on what it is, right? I mean, ooh. Oh. Yeah, yeah. Then that would be a problem, right? And that's I imagine that's why he came to her in a sense. Sure, she would destroy the world. That is true. I mean, not really. I kind of doubt she would actually destroy the world, but you know. Kill Kaganui? Maybe. Oh, that face. Ooh, sure, sure. Oh god, don't say it's further into the future. Say it's never gonna happen. She's being the mediator, huh? As a friends. Interesting. The powers of the immortal. God, what a nice shot. Hmm. Can he live like a human, though, you know? Sure. Is that really how it is? I suppose. Hmm. Yeah. Ooh. Interesting. Yeah. Okay, if you say so. Hmm. Can he really keep that promise, though? She does not sound very convinced. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, yeah, it is. Ooh. Yeah, no, you wouldn't be able to stop yourself, right? Of course. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, essentially the same way you felt about Nautico's situation, right? God, what a what a shot. Only what's in front of his eyes. Oh, okay. Okay. They got to make sure. I guess they got to make sure they don't need to kill him right now. Hmm. I mean, she's always bound to you anyway. Hmm. Yeah. I agree. I agree. Yeah, she has a shadow. He doesn't. I mean, a reflection. Okay. Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. Oh God! Don't do that. If you say so. They're gonna break every bone in his entire body. Not a chance of me catching any of that. Okay, like what are we? Surely. I bet that's what's gonna happen. Right, right. Uh-huh. 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 I'm sure. And maybe she should break every bone in his body. Maybe that's what he needs. Oh, this music. Right, over at Conver's house. Yeah, yeah. I, I guess, I suppose. She already knew Karen, right? Had she ever met Skihi, I wonder? Not being a big deal. Is it really not a big deal? Interesting. Yeah, he thinks like the consequences for him are nothing compared to that, of course. That's kind of like killing one, like in a way, right? That's basically like killing one. Ooh, okay. Ooh, a good question. A very good question. I feel like we aren't going to get a straight answer. Right, right. What does it even mean to be immortal, right? But yet she says that she hunts immortal ones. So what does it mean to her, I suppose? Okay. That's kind of ominous. Sure. No matter what. Ooh. What does Aragi think of that, I wonder? Yeah. Okay, okay. He was part of their group, like the Okay, okay. That would be awesome, actually. Yes, please. That'd be amazing. I would love that. Ooh, her reasons. That's interesting. Considering she discounted her own emotions and her own motivations so much. Ooh. Guy and Izuko. Tadatsuru. We've not heard that name before, right? Go with the flow. Okay. As always, when we're involved with Guy and Izuko, feels like we're in the web of some kind of plan, right? Man. Ooh, okay. Why? Sure. They're not there anymore. Interesting. Oh, well, we're here. God, what is going on? I mean, every time Guy Nizuko's involved, I just feel like, there's stuff happening, huh? Sure, sure, I suppose. Okay, that doesn't, that does not help. They're gone. Yeah, they aren't here. What happened? Is this something Guy Nizuko has orchestrated, or... What are we... Okay. I've read some of that. I don't know. Hey, her room's all clean, right? She's got all the books nicely piled up. Ooh. A crane. We saw one of those in episode 1. In one of the shots of Ononoki. A clue. Okay. Right. Her face. Yeah, yeah. Huh? It's that guy, right? It's that guy that they just mentioned, and now he's suddenly here, right? What a coincidence. I wow, what a fun hobby. Is it? What does a crane mean? Oh, oh, a bird. Right. Okay, yeah, yeah. Huh. Interesting. What is the chance of that, huh? Tiori Tadatsuru, a doll master. Like Yotsugi, in a way, right? Oh, I don't know. Math stuff. Triangles. Right, right. Tends to act on grudges. A softie when it comes to work. Okay. Is he thinking of it as hopeless? Right, right. It feels almost like a test, in a way, for Araragi, right? Yeah, yeah. It's like he's immediately in a situation where he needs to not rely on his vampire power. I agree. This is very strange. Yeah. Hmm. Right, right. Yeah, yeah. Your relationship with her changed. The way you viewed it changed. Ooh, it was temporary. Yeah, yeah. And that's why he feels, oh, divine punishment. That's even stronger than what he said before. Like atonement, compensation? No. Divine punishment. Hmm. Sure. It really is very, very perfect timing, huh? Right, right. Suddenly, this scenario has happened where you can't use your vampire powers to resolve it. Exactly, yeah. It's interesting that Kagenui's the one bringing that up, though. I thought she would know if it's Guy Nizuko's doings. Ooh. Unpaid tabs. Interesting. Is that really how it feels? That it's all just crumbling apart, I suppose. Ooh. Ooh. Yeah. Of what you hid away, and is that part of what you think you deserve this divine punishment for? What's crashing down on you? It's like how he was talking in the opening scene in episode 1, right? Ooh, an ally of justice. That's what he would want, right? No. Aesthetics. Man-made existences. Okay, okay. Hmm. God, what are they doing? A good question, sure. A mediator, huh? Yeah, a middleman. Similar to Oshino and Kaiki, kinda, in my mind. The perfect specialist. Why do you think that? Don't drown. Sure, I suppose, I suppose. What is happening? Is it really? I suppose, right? I mean, Aragi thinking of it as like divine punishment like this is obviously incorrect, right? Like, I mean, of course. It's just very telling about how he views it. He has to do it. Interesting. Kind of brushes it aside, frankly. It feels like. Interesting. And of course she knew, right? But she knows everything, right? Interesting. Why do you have powers anyway, Kagami? Why are you so strong? Ooh, a message. Okay, okay, sure. Yeah. Well, he's using them as bait, I assume. Oh, and we established he is outside of it, of course. Or he was part of it at one point, now he's outside of it. Yeah, yeah. So many coincidences, huh? I don't know. I don't know. I can't decide what I think about that. Artificial, intentional, and malicious. Yeah. That's how it feels, but I can't decide if that's me like playing into Aragi's way of thinking about this. North Shira Heavy Shrine. The last one he opened, of course. I suppose. And Aragi needs to, right? Hmm. Okay, okay. Hmm. I suppose. Oh god, he's that scary, huh? Man. Okay, okay. I wonder if she is really going to help him at all, right? Oh, God, her face is scary sometimes. Okay, okay, of course. Don't wanna delay at all. Ah, man, really? That's such a mean ending. That's such a mean ending. Ah, okay, okay. God, what a strange situation to be in. I wish I could just watch the next episode. I just like because I feel like I'm gonna theorize a bunch about this, and all of it might just be nonsense because I don't know what's gonna happen, right? It feels here's like where my head is with this, right? Aragi's saying that this is in some way divine punishment for all the things that he thinks he's been doing wrong for the past like year, I guess, right? Or at least that's what it feels like to him. Um, it does certainly. It. I don't think it's divine punishment, of course, but Aragi saying that it can't be a coincidence. That it has to be, it has to be connected. All of these things. I can't decide if I'm playing into that, if it's wrong of me to like try and agree with him, kind of that this feels like an orchestrated scenario, or if it really is just true that this is just randomly happening right now. Like whenever a guy in Izuku's involved, it's so hard to not feel like you're just like in some giant webbed plan that you know nothing about. But she knows everything, right? So like I don't it's always gonna feel like that no matter what, because she always knows what's gonna happen. So I don't know. I don't know. Okay. We'll talk about it in the discussion. Okay, let's talk about the episode. Man, this arc is so interesting. I can't decide, as I was talking about it during the ending there, I can't decide like how meta I think it's being, you know? Um it's interesting. Aragi's attitude about everything that's going on is very interesting. It's his whole thing is that in some way this is like atonement, compensation. He even says like divine punishment later, right? Um so he feels like what's happening, like he basically says it flat out, like the what he's experiencing right now, it makes sense. It's divine punishment. He says the like what he's going through is nothing compared to what happened with like Nadeko, for example, right? It's that like responsibility thing. He views what happened to Nadeko as like his fault, essentially, right? Especially so because he couldn't be the one to like fix it, right? To atone for it, I suppose, you know. So he said like it feels like there's a bunch of like unpaid tabs piling up, right? I guess like what I imagine is from his perspective over the course of the story in general, and maybe more so over the past 6 months, because that's basically what he says, which I guess would be like since like July, since like August, somewhere around there. Um, he feels he's been being pretty reckless. He feels like I suppose that all these things that have been going like kind of like wrong in a way, like Hajikuji's disappearance, everything that happened with Nadeko, of course. What else? I mean, even the stuff before Hajikuji's disappearance, like in Kabuki, I think you can imagine a message Aragi taking from that perhaps isn't too positive, maybe like the way he could view it, right? He thinks that all these things, it's like these unpaid tabs that he thinks are piling up, you know, and I guess this is like the culmination of it in a way in his mind, or at least he thinks something like this is inevitable, that he will be punished for it. He'll have to pay compensation for it, right? Not only that, not only is it like this idea of these unpaid tabs, like these things I suppose that he feels he's like failing to like be responsible for properly, I guess, right? Like Nadeko, like what happened with Hajikuji and Kabuki. I mean, like it's still his attitude about Hajikuji's disappearance must be so God. It's just every time I think about it, how that followed immediately after Kabuki, where he tried to make her disappear, and then the rules of the universe appeared and made her disappear right after. You know, it's just I feel like that really makes sense for him to view this as something that is in some way like divine punishment that he has to that he has to pay compensation, you know. Not only that, but it's like the idea of paying compensation for using his abilities as a vampire, right? He views this idea of being a vampire, I guess, in my mind, like um relying on other people in his life in some way. Like in this case, more specifically, like Shinobu, I guess, right? Shinobu is obviously the direct connection to the idea of using his vampire powers. Um, yeah, he still fundamentally views it as something that's like isn't his to use, right? He thinks this vampire power, um, relying on other people in some sense like that, is something that he has to atone for. That he's relied on the power of immortality to fight against aberrations as atonement for that. Not atonement, compensation. He thinks it's compensation. Like what's the difference between those things? I mean, clearly there's a difference between atonement and compensation, right? Like one of them is like transactional in a way. It's like he's allowed to do it as long as he pays some kind of price versus not having been allowed to do it at all and doing something to make up for the fact that he did, right? There's like that would be the difference to me between compensation and atonement. So it really tells you something about the way he views this, right? I it's so interesting because again, it makes you think back to Skihi Phoenix when it's like the message of that arc was him accepting like this monster version of himself, right? Like it felt so much like it was the him changing his mind so much about the way he viewed himself and everything. But again, I guess it's just has he just been this whole time thinking that really he's just been breaking the rules still? And then he has to atone, he has to pay compensation, that he's waiting for divine punishment to reach him, you know? Um, God, I mean that's depressing, I guess, right? Sure, I suppose that's what he says, right? The other question, I guess, about the way he views this is Ononoki and Kagenui, telling him he has to stop relying on his vampire powers, right? Telling him that if he wants to remain human, if he wants to keep the status quo going, he can't rely on his vampire powers from now on. So again, it's like this is a challenge for me, for my interpretation of like what's going on here, because if if in Aragi's mind the connection between like vampirism and like human connection, right? Like that's the whole thing, right? Obviously, the message of the show isn't going to be that human connection is actually bad and that Aragi was right all along, right? So we have to ask ourselves, why is Ononoki saying this, right? Like on like a more meta level, right? Like what does it mean for Ononoki to be saying that he can't rely on his vampire powers anymore, right? Um, because that would be weird, right? It's like the translation of that with like my interpretation would be her telling him that he can't rely on other people anymore, right? It would be like some weird like feeding into his whole like system of and way of viewing things from like back in Kizu, you know? Like that would be weird, right? It would be weird if Araragi actually received some form of divine punishment for having been fundamentally wrong and being connected to other people, being a monster, you know? That certainly isn't the way the story's going to go. So how can I interpret this? Can I interpret this, I guess, in a way that fits like my interpretation here? Um, what I think that makes sense, and I feel like would be a natural step for where the story could progress for Aragi as a character, would be he has to stop relying on his vampire powers, and the important part of that, rather than viewing this as his vampire powers meaning like relying on other people, right? I think it's about like his mindset towards it, right? It is like he has been relying on other people to change him this whole time, right? Um like the it's like he has been kind of resistant to change throughout the story in a sense, right? It's almost like the things that have been happening to him, it's like he does view them as like this like divine, as he calls it in this one, like this divine punishment, right? Not everything is divine punishment, of course, but in this way of like these events that have been happening to him throughout the story, a lot of them are things outside of his control, and it feels like it would be very easy for him to view it all in this lens of this change not coming from within him in any way, and it coming from all of these circumstances he finds himself in, the people around him changing him, that kind of thing, right? The reason he was afraid of connection in the first place, right, was like losing himself in some way, losing his humanity, right? Um, and I feel like the natural progression for him as a character to go to after this point would be to be able to accept that change, accept himself as a changed person, not accept himself as a monster, right? Accept himself as a changed person and not view it in this weird like vampire way. I guess like what I'm saying is what the opening scene here like really makes me think. It really makes me think about his he says, yeah, there's no way to fix this. There's no way to go back. What that makes me think is, yes, he has fundamentally changed as a person. That feels like that is what this is all about. I guess like fundamentally changed. Like what I mean by that is, yes, he's a very different person than he was at the beginning of Kizu, right? Like he has certainly changed very much as a person throughout the course of the entire story, right? He's still Araragi, of course, right? Like he's still him, you know. And that is the thing that he needs to be able to recognize, that he is still himself, I suppose, right? Um, Strangely enough, that cruel declaration Inoki-chan gave me, that hopeless answer lacking in any salvation whatsoever, once she gave it to me, I could accept it easily. He views it all as this, yeah, he views it as him being reckless, as it being him abusing this weird vampire power. He isn't viewing it in the idea of him like having changed and it being like some kind of natural progression that he has gone through, right? And I feel like that is what we're like working towards here, right? We have one episode of the arc left, and I feel like there is no way that we're going to resolve that within Aragi's mind within the next episode. That would be crazy. Um, so it makes me wonder more if, just like how it felt like kind of the general theme of like the second season of Monogatari was, it was so much about like self-acceptance for all of these different characters, like Kanbaru and Hanakawa and like Kaiki and Nadeko at the end and all of that stuff, you know. I wonder if this is more generally setting up an idea of um like what this entire like these next few arcs of the story are going to be about, right? Which is, I guess it's like how would I say it's different? For Aragi, it would just be like accepting the change within himself, I suppose, and recognizing that he's still himself, of course, which does feel very similar to like things that were covered in second season, of course, right? It certainly is different in a way. I guess it's hard to say why. Probably just because it's coming from Aragi, and he had such a different starting point than all of these other characters, you know. Um, so God, how do I wrap all of this up and make any of this make sense in like a more coherent way? How do I try and say this like succinctly? So I feel like what Ononoki is saying here when she says that you should, a method to keep the status quo, a method to uh yeah, you need to no longer rely on your vampire powers anymore, to remain human at all, right? In this case, it's not to remain human in like the Aragi sense, of like being himself unchanged by others. I guess it's like remain human in terms of like being able to view himself as a human, I guess, right? Like that would be the final step, I guess, right? Is to be able to still look at himself, be able to see himself in the mirror, which he can't do as of this arc, recognize that he is still Araragi, right? Despite everything, despite all of these horrible unpaid tabs he has and the divine judgment coming down on him. Um, and not rely on his vampire powers, I guess, right? He externalizes it so much almost through like that way he views it, right? He views it as like the change coming from, it's like change being inflicted on him rather than change naturally coming from within himself. I guess that is how I imagine it, you know. Like it makes me think of like the wording that they used all the way back in Bake, when they were talking about Shinobu. This was like back when we didn't know anything about anything, right? But like they would say all the time that Shinobu attacked Araragi, right? I don't remember if Araragi himself ever used that wording. I remember Oshino using it, right? Which I feel like is such a good way to phrase it, because I think Araragi viewing like the change that has happened to him over the course of the story is almost like an attack on himself. I think that makes a lot of sense, right? I think like that's like how he views it. He views the change coming to him as not something from within himself. Like fundamentally, I guess that's where it's always come back to, right? Like his interpretation of what it means to be human back in Kizu, you know? So I think that's what this arc is about. I don't know how we're going to address that. Thinking back to the first episode, the monologue that Aragi has at the very beginning of the first episode, where he says this is like the end of the human known as Aragi Kiyomi. it from that point of view, it feels like whatever message he's going to take from this arc, right? Like he said that too, right? That he like painfully understood the thing that he learned from this arc, something like that, right? From this story. Um I don't think he's going to have a positive end to this arc. What it seems like we're setting up for, I guess, is like a failure, I suppose. Is however this is going, wherever the events of this arc are leading us, I mean, we have one episode left. Um, it is not going to end with Araragi having a perfect understanding of like the change within himself and being perfectly fine with everything, you know? I guess the question is how is Ononoki going to relate to that? Because Ononoki, the way he views Ononoki is still something I am so unsure of, right? He calls her a monster, someone who's not human in the beginning of this arc, in that long monologue, right? Um, Even this episode, some of the things that Ononoki says about how she's unable to like use her own feelings or whatever. It's like her own feelings are just like there and she can't like rely on them or something. You know, she's helpless and she just has to do what Kaganui says, right? That feels like that so much goes in line with like Aragi's whole thing about losing humanity, right? Like viewing her as a monster in the sense of she doesn't have like her own individuality and her own humanity, which is so important to Aragi, you know. Um, so like what I feel like something that's interesting about that is I feel like Ononoki is like wrong, right? I feel like Ononoki saying that. I wish I could find the exact moment where she says it. I feel like Ononoki saying this is she is just like incorrect. Yeah, here we go. I'm only a Shikigami, so if Ine-chan tells me to do it, I'll have to fight even you. I have my personal feelings, but they're just there. That's how I was made, right? That they like don't mean anything. That she can't. That she has to fight him no matter what, and her personal feelings don't mean anything. Um, I feel like she's just wrong in the sense of like it's so clear that she does have like emotions that matter, right? And I guess that's kind of what she says, that her emotions are there and she has them. Just like she has to do what Kaganui says. Um, which maybe that in and of itself is actually an interesting thing to think about in terms of like the way Aragi views Ononoki in relation to his whole like monster like vampirism humanity thing, you know? Because his idea of it was like or at least my interpretation, I guess, of his idea of it was that he was worried about other people like changing him, right? And like he thinks that he himself would be changed so much that he wouldn't be himself anymore. But it's like what's interesting is what Ononoki is saying here is like she is still herself in some way. She still has her personal feelings. She just has to do what Kaganui says, right? Which is different, right? It's different because it shows that in some way Ononoki hasn't like completely lost everything about herself. She is still like an individual and she has emotions and feelings, you know? It's just very difficult for me to see how that's going to connect to. I mean, I guess I can imagine ways that could connect to Aragi's thing about like humanity and vampirism, right? Like, um, what would be like in his current situation right now, viewing himself as what's happening to him as some kind of divine punishment for all of these things, for like failing all of this personal responsibility that he feels for all of these different events that have happened over the past 6 months, right? Not only that, but even worse, I guess using this power of vampirism, this power that he thinks he doesn't deserve in order to achieve those things, right? Um, how would that in any way relate to Ononoki with whatever the events of the arc are going to be coming up, right? Us going to fight Tadatsuru, right? Um, I really don't know. If he sees Ononoki in some way, like do something against Kaganui's wishes, what would that mean for him? If he sees Ononoki, oh god, I don't know. I guess I'll just have to watch the next episode, right? I feel like pointlessly speculating. I don't know. Once it happens, I'm sure it'll be very clear, I guess, how it connects to Aragi's whole thing, right? Hmm. I don't know. I don't know. Um, the other interesting thing to talk about is immortality. Is what the hell is immortality? I feel like this episode kind of trolls me because they talk about immortality, um, and literally all they say, right? Aragi asks Kaganui, um, why she fights immortal aberrations, right? Um, and they completely don't give him an answer at all. All they literally basically all they say is what does it mean to be immortal anyway? And it's like, that's what I'm asking. That's what I'm asking you. Like, tell me what it means to be immortal, like thematically, right? What does it mean to be immortal? Um, for Araragi, I mean, like obvious things, I guess, for Araragi is it gives him a vehicle through which he can be endlessly reckless and sacrifice himself for others. And it also means he can't kill himself, right? It's kind of it really is like a double-edged sword for Araragi because it lets him be so recklessly like selfless kinda and like throw himself at these things that he views are his personal responsibility, but it makes it impossible for him to die for them, right? Like the most meaningful moment was back in Bake with in the Kanbru arc in Tsuruga Monkey, right? When he wants to die so bad. He wants to let Kanburu kill him so badly, and the immortality doesn't let him do it, right? And for Shinobu, it's also like very interesting like that, right? How she's unable to die, right? She was also depressed and suicidal in Kizu, just like Aragi was. And the immortality won't let her die, right? Without having Aragi kill her, I guess, as he could have at the end of Kizu. So like immortality is in that place in the story. It like serves that function for these characters. But what does it mean in and of itself? In a way, it kind of feels like training wheels almost for Aragi, right? That it's like he has been so reckless. He has been so it's like I suppose the immortality allows him to act like this in this way, kind of in a risk-free scenario until now, right? Until he's facing this punishment for it. And it's like if he didn't have the immortality, if he wasn't immortal, what would he have done with like the situation with Nautico? How would he have coped with Conbrew? He would have let her kill him, right? How would he have coped with all of these different things that he's used his vampire powers for, you know? So it's like the question is if one day Aragi changes so much to the point that he doesn't view himself as a vampire anymore, right? That the like let's say the at some point far in the future, he's changed his viewpoints on all of this so much that he isn't a vampire at all anymore. He no longer has this immortality, right? That would be where we'd want to reach. He would have to be able to be. He would have to be like I guess at a point where he's not trying to kill himself for other people and feeling this crushing responsibility. Um, because I guess the problem for him is it's like if he didn't have the immortality with like this Nautico situation, would he still have just thrown himself at her and let her kill him? You know, it's kind of impossible to know. You would certainly hope not, of course, right? That was obviously post Kabuki, where it's like he knows the consequence for if he died, which is Shinobu killing everyone, right? Or or Shinjogahara even before that, right? Like at the end of Bake, if he had let Hanakawa kill him, Shinjogahara is saying she would kill whoever killed him, you know? So he has these threats, but those are just threats, right? Again, it's not something that comes within him, you know? It's not something that, like, he himself has decided that his life is so valuable that he shouldn't throw it away for these reasons, you know? So it feels like someday the immortality has to disappear. And I guess that's basically where we're at. Because if he uses his immortality, if he uses his immortality now, he's using his vampirism now more, and that could be very bad, right? I guess the actual consequences of that, I suppose, are unforeseen. Like, I mean, who knows? I suppose, right? Um, I guess the training wheels have to come off. He has to stop doing like what he was doing with Nautico. He has to be able to not feel that crushing responsibility and want to throw himself at it. The problem is, I just feel like it will just lead him to just like depression and awful, horrible feelings. I feel like he's like not ready. I guess that's my thing. Is I feel like considering this is taking place just like a week or something after the stuff with Nautico is finished, 2 weeks, right? We're like right before Valentine's Day. Um, I mean, he was just doing it. He was just throwing himself at Nautico over and over again and feeling that horrible, crushing guilt and responsibility. So, the immortality disappearing now, I don't think he's ready for it, really. You know what I mean? Like, hmm, I don't know. I don't know. That still doesn't really answer my question. That is kind of just a very extended version of what purpose does immortality serve in the story rather than like what is immortality representative of itself, you know? Because I can't really think of any like meaningful like analog for that in any way in real life. And maybe there just isn't. Maybe immortality in and of itself just is effectively a character device for to in some way show Aragi changing, I guess, right? Because I guess it's like my idea for this, now that I'm saying all this, would have been that someday Aragi would lose his immortality. Not really in a situation like this where it's like forced away from him, but he would lose it in a way where it like wouldn't matter, I guess, right? Like he would lose it and he wouldn't even want to have used it anymore, right? Because that's what's interesting about this arc is we are immediately throwing Aragi into a situation where he uh he is gonna want to use his vampire powers real bad, right? All this stuff with Tadatsuru, which God, this is all a whole can of worms, huh? Um, I really don't know what to think about it. Tadatsuru is mentioned for the first time in this episode, right? Kaganui is literally like, oh yeah, there's this other guy who also hates immortal aberrations. Um, and surely you won't have to deal with him ever, and then he's here suddenly, and he's kidnapped everyone, and and Aragi's gonna have to go deal with him. Um, and because Guy Nizuko is involved, it feels so much like it has something to do with Guy Nizuko, right? That Guy Nizuko has in some way orchestrated all of this, that in some way, um, that this is all something that she's doing for some purpose. Um, I just have no idea why, right? I'm completely unable to answer the question of why she would do this, what purpose it would serve. Um, the only thing I can think, of course, is this feels like a test for Araki. This feels like a test both for like him as a character and also like in universe in a way. Like they just talked about how he needs to not use his immortality and not use his vampire powers anymore. And this is an immediate test where it's like they're seeing if he can like uphold that vow almost, right? He makes this very shallow vow, as they say, um, promising that he won't do it, not even believing himself really. That yeah, if in front of his eyes Shinjigahara Hanakawa are about to die, well, he's about to see it with his sisters and with Kanpuru, right? That he would use his vampire powers, and he's immediately thrown into a situation now where he's gonna really want to use it. So, like, I guess you could say the purpose of this, if this is orchestrated by Guy Nizuko in some way, is just to see if he's going to uphold that vow and not use his vampire powers anymore. Um, and, like, I guess that's something they would be concerned with in a way, right? Like, I guess they don't want Aragi turning in fully into a vampire. I just feel like that's kind of like surface level, and there has to be more meaning to it than just that. You know what I mean? Because like I guess the question would be like Guy Nizuko knows everything, so the fact that Guy Nizuko knows everything, one, means that everything is always going to feel like it's a plan from her because she knows everything. So she's always going to position herself in a way where she takes best advantage of whatever is going to happen because she knows everything. So everything always feels like it's going to be some scheme by her. Um, but just the other question has to be is like why this feels like for Guy Nizuko such like a it just feels like she has bigger fish to fry than this. You know what I mean? Like if this all comes down to them trying to make sure that Aragi is going to uphold this oath to not use his vampire powers, even in the face of this, right? And Guy Nizuko orchestrated all of this stuff with Tadatsuru for that purpose. Um, like maybe, right? I just maybe the importance of that is lost on me in some way, like for Guy Nizuko. Uh, I just don't know why she would be doing that. You know what I mean? I guess she's a specialist. He's a vampire now, I suppose, right? Obviously, like the risk, of course, would be like from the specialist point of view, right? Is the link between Aragi and Shinobu is very like scary in a way. It would be so easy for if she becomes Kiss Shot again, that would be a big problem for them, right? Assumedly. Um, but I guess I don't know how this would even lead to that, right? If Aragi becomes like a natural vampire through some sense, that doesn't actually change his situation with Shinobu, right? Um, so I don't know. I don't know. Now the other angle of this, of course, is like, is this actually a plot in any way by Guy Nizuko, right? Um, like Kaganui tries to talk him out of viewing it like this, right? Kaganui tries to talk him out of the idea of viewing it as a as anything like this this idea of it being divine punishment. And I agree with her on that, right? Certainly this has nothing to do with some kind of divine punishment or atonement or compensation for everything that's happened to Araragi. Um, I could understand from Aragi's point of view, uh, that his life has probably been not that great lately. Like Hajikuji disappeared, which is the worst thing ever. All the stuff with Nadeko happened. Now this is happening. You know, as he said, it's like a bunch of unpaid tabs coming knocking at once. Like, yeah, I can understand him feeling like he's fundamentally like lost his path in a way, and that's why all this is happening. Um, and Kaganui tries to talk him out of it. But at the same time, this is just such a ridiculous situation, right? That she mentions Tadatsuru and then suddenly he's just here, you know? Um, so I don't know. I can't decide. I can't decide if I'm being like Araragi by viewing it as if it has to be related to everything else or not, right? I don't know. I don't know. All that happened is some weirdo kidnapped your two little sisters and your underclassmen. In this situation, you're a one-sided victim. For argument's sake, let's say divine punishment exists. That would only affect you and how you're losing your humanity. Those three being targeted is completely unrelated. I agree. Okay, okay. She has an interesting perspective, I think, on this, because she does view herself in a way as like an ally of justice in a sense, right? And Aragi views her in that light too, right? Um, so her basically, it feels like she's basically appealing to Aragi's like this like sense of justice in a way, right? That it would be very unjust and it wouldn't make any sense for his sisters and Kombaru to be targeted if it is him who needs to undergo the divine punishment, right? So I guess even from Aragi's point of view of this idea of like this him breaking the rules in some sense, right? The laws of the universe or whatever. Yeah, it would be him that would face some kind of punishment for it, not the people around him, right? Which is interesting. I have to save those three who were completely unrelated to this. It feels like he just brushes her off completely. It is not like, I don't know, doesn't really engage with it, frankly. Hmm. I don't know. I just have to see how the arc ends. I'm just gonna have to see how the arc ends to really. This feels like a complicated arc. It really does. I feel like there's um I guess because this is the first arc of like a new season of Monogatari, right? Of a new like section of the story here. It probably makes sense that this feels like complicated. It feels like setup, I suppose, for a lot of stuff going on with Araragi, you know? Um hmm yeah, I just really gotta see how the arc ends, I guess, to really have a firm stance, I guess, on like what happens here, you know? Kaganui, and yeah, the other interesting thing too is it seems like Kaganui doesn't even know, right? That she's just saying that Gain Senpai told her to told her to do what she's doing. She doesn't. It doesn't seem like to me that she's lying about all of this. That she knows this is all some crazy plot from Guy Nizuko. But I guess would Guy Nizuko even tell anyone? Like, would Guy Nizuko, if this is all some plan that she herself has orchestrated, would she have even told Kaganui about it? You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know. Hmm. All my powers are meant for killing immortal aberrations. I can't use them against humans. Why does she have powers anyway? Right? Like why is she so monstrously strong, you know? As a thematically, it's interesting and it makes sense, I think, from like through Aragi's eyes, like seeing her as like a warrior of justice and all of this, you know? Very interesting. Yeah, and Tadatsuri's objective is Araragi. Because yeah, he's outside of the guy in Izuku like sphere of like influence, right? So he views them as like things that should be destroyed, I guess. Still, he doesn't view them as harmless. Which again, it makes me think so much again about Skihi Phoenix and like in that moment at the end of Skihi Phoenix, Aragi wanted Kaganui to like judge him essentially, right? And it feels like this is such a parallel to that situation where it's like he asks Kaganui even about Tadatsuru being like a hero of justice or not. Um, and so it's like it's on his mind, I think, as well, the idea of this being that judgment that he wants, right? Then some way, like how would it be different, right? How would it be different for him compared to Skihi Phoenix? If this is another judgment of some sense of him as a person in some way, right? Whether or not he's like too far gone, I suppose, as a vampire now, right? Um, it's like he wants that. still, I guess. He wants to be judged in some way. He imagines that's still where this has to go, you know? Hmm. Yeah, right as Shinobu I get into a situation where we can't fight, someone who's really targeting us shows up. Artificial, intentional, and malicious is how this bad timing feels. Yeah. It feels like now, this is something I feel like I should have brought up for now, but I literally just thought of it in this moment 5 seconds ago. But Ogi. We talked about Ogi and how the idea of whether or not the whole situation with Nadeko that Ogi did orchestrate and how that was like so closely led to like Aragi's death, right? Or like could have theoretically, right? If Nadeko had been able to go through with it. I guess who knows if Shinobu could have just killed Nadeko or not, right? Who knows? Either way, it felt like that situation was like orchestrated to lead to Aragi's death, right? Um, I guess yet again that is interesting how it feels like this situation is kind of like that. How this feels like something so this feels like a specifically orchestrated malicious attempt to do what? To kill Araragi yet again, maybe? Um, and it is something that is so closely related to, like, Aragi's weird sense of, like, the rules and right and wrong, which, like, again, my interpretation of Ogi at this point, it's not, like, fully fleshed out, I guess, but that's kind of what I imagine her to be representative of, in some sense. Um, that is like at play here, right? Like the way Aragi's thinking all of this is so heavily influenced by those things that I imagine Ogi herself to represent. So would she be part of everything that's going on here right now? Like maybe. I mean, again, it's like we know this is 2 weeks after everything that happened in Pitagi and Koi in the last arc, which Ogi did all this stuff just in that arc, like to Kaiki having the middle schooler guy attack him, all this, you know. So I mean, yeah, we're in the middle of Ogi territory, right? So I wonder. I guess I don't really know what more to say than that, right? Like I feel like you could really go off the deep end and because like obviously the idea of Ogi wanting to kill Araragi, if that's really what the situation is, makes a lot of sense because it's like Araragi himself was suicidal at some point and wanted to die, right? His actions still a lot of the time are suicidal in nature, and it's just because he's immortal that they aren't. Um, and if Ogi represents those very things, this idea of like right and wrong and objective like rules, um, if she represents those very things that led him to that suicidality in the first place, right? The way of life that led him to that, then yeah, it makes sense that she would want to kill him, right? So, right? Maybe so. Maybe that's what's going on here. And maybe, and again, it's like, it's not that Guy Nizuko is behind all of this, perhaps, but it's that she's reacting to the situation, perhaps, right? I wonder. That would kind of make sense to me, right? But I don't know, right? Because like think about it, right? What I was just saying is how all this stuff about how it feels like this idea of being judged, right? Is something that Aragi it's not something he like got over, right? Not entirely, but it's like a step that he's been through, right? He's already tried to be judged by someone he imagines as a hero of justice, which was Kaganui back in Tsukiki Phoenix. So if he was still on that, if it was still a problem, it's like why would he be going through this again, right? Like why would we be going through the same step in the story again, it feels like, of him wanting Tadatsuru to be someone who judges him. Well, if it was Ogi that was somehow behind this whole artificial, intentional, malicious scenario, just like with Nadeko, um, and Ogi represents like this part of him that does believe he still needs to be judged, like he did back then, right? Then yeah, then that would make a lot of sense, right? So okay, maybe, right? Maybe. I don't know. Because I guess I'm desperate for any answer that isn't just inconceivable Guy Nizuko plan going on, I guess. And it could still be an inconceivable Guy Nizuko plan, I guess, right? But I want to have an answer that isn't that. So I'm going with this for now, this whole Ogi idea that somehow Ogi is behind everything, even though I have no evidence for it at all, other than it just like thematically kind of making sense, right? Like I feel like you can follow the chain of like ideas that like lead to that. So I'm happy with it. I think that kind of makes sense, right? I wonder. Okay, we have been all over the place in this episode, huh? I feel like it's too late to go through the whole episode now. We've been talking about various parts of it for 40 minutes now. Um we talked about all this, all the beginning here, with the idea of him needing to rely less on vampirism, right? And again, obviously that goes into like what I was saying about immortality too. The idea of him having to rely less on immortality if he truly wants to, like, God, I don't know, not die, right? Like he can't rely on this power forever, right? Like it is true. If in a way the immortality is like training wheels for Araragi in terms of like he literally can't kill himself as long as he's immortal. Someday those training wheels got to come off. So yeah, he shouldn't rely on it forever, right? And that makes sense to me. Um, God, not the stoplights. Not the stoplights, huh? Is this a hint? Is this a hint about Ogi? Am I right? The stoplights are telling me? Oh my god, I can't believe I figured it out. That's insane. That's crazy, huh? Um, hmm. Oh god, them changing from red to green? God, what does that mean? Them changing from red to green. You know what? We really can't go down a rabbit hole right now. We really can't. We really can't. Um, hmm. God, Shinobu. There are some really, I love the way this arc looks. There are so many great shots of like Shinobu and Ononoki. Ononoki really gets like God, I don't know, the special treatment in this episode. She has so many shots that are just so good. The shot of like her face, like this one too, with the moon in the background. So much about the moon. I guess it makes sense. The shot of like her face when they go to the house, when they go to Kamburu's house, it looks so creepy. She looks so much like a corpse, right? I mean, that's what she's supposed to be. They want him to swear, of course, he does. Hmm. In the end, no matter how many oaths I make, very interesting imagery. This blood on the it makes me like what does this make you think of? It makes me think of like sacrifice. It makes me think of like Jesus, I guess, right? Um, like the crown of thorns, right? Is that what it's called, right? That's kind of what it makes me think of. In some way, Araragi like viewing himself like that, perhaps, you know? Very interesting. And yeah, he couldn't stop himself, of course. God, what an image here. This looks like episode, right? With the cross, you know? I don't even know who this is supposed to be. I can't even tell. Yeah, he would still use it. He would still use it, of course. And I guess this alone, him saying this, right? Him saying that he would still use his immortality, right? Even in a situation where it's like he's not supposed to be able to. It's like, does it show that it's like he's not at that point yet? I guess the important thing is it's like he wouldn't think about the consequences, right? Because it's still an option that's on the table, right? So the real test for Aragi, I guess, would be is if that immortality was gone entirely, how would he act? How would he be? You know, how would he, you know? Yeah. Hmm. They have to really look at his body, of course. Oh, there's so many text flashes. Man, I don't feel it as much of an inconvenience nor a handicap. Yeah, he's so God, like him apologizing so much to Shinobu for all of this. It's just I don't know. It's very interesting that he still feels the need to say things like that, you know? Hmm. But again, it's something that he himself views as a personal punishment for him that is like being that other people it's almost like collateral damage when the punishment should be focused on himself, I suppose, right? Hmm. So yeah, they've got to Ononoki's really gonna examine him, allegedly. She should probably break every bone in his body. That would be the good way to examine him. What do these text flashes say? If I ask whether or not I'm relieved Ononoki's doing it, but those words of hers you flitted over and somehow feel if it's not a surprise attack, she will break bones. It feels like she just made that declaration. I literally, exactly. Yeah, like how she said she wouldn't break his bones by surprise, like Kakenui did. But yeah, of course. She will do it not by surprise. She will inform him before she breaks his femur. Obviously, obviously. um so Kaganui does get this phone call from Guy Nizuko. Again, it's like this doesn't mean obviously that it has anything to do with Guy Nizuko actually having anything to do with the plan because she knows everything, right? That's right. It ended up not being much. It didn't. That's how it's supposed to be. Like, he thinks of it as not being much, of course, because I guess it's something that affects him so much. And it's like he only thinks of it as a big deal once it actually starts affecting the people around him. You know, it's like that's almost the function it feels like this fulfills, you know, is how it's like this idea of becoming more vampiric. It's like he wouldn't have been spurred into action in any way by all this. He wouldn't have done anything, I guess. He just thinks, oh, it's no big deal. It's just me receiving my divine punishment, you know? So of course it's yet another thing. It's so convenient that it's that this whole thing with Tadatsuru starts, you know? Yeah, she defanged an immortal aberration before it was born. She really did it. And yeah, he asks her about why she wants to kill immortal aberrations. She literally just doesn't give him an answer and just says like all oddities are immortal. So what does that even mean, right? Hmm. Yeah, I mean, literally, she dodges the topic completely. Like, there is no answer contained in what she says, frankly. Interesting. You want to see a side story-esque episode showing how I went down this path? Yeah, I really do. I really do, Kaganu. I want to very badly, frankly. Honestly. And she says to worry about Yotsugi's reasons, which is interesting. It's another thing that humanizes Ononoki so much, because Ononoki is she just like devalued her own motivations and her own feelings so much, saying that they're just there and they don't matter, and she's entirely like under control of what Kaganui wants. It's so interesting. I don't know, because you'd think from Kaganui's perspective, Ononoki's reasons like wouldn't matter if that's truly all Ononoki was, you know. Hmm. She gets the call from Guy Nizuko, I guess, telling her Tadatsuru is kidnapping people. Man, they show up. Yes, yes, yes. Shinobu gives him a shoulder. How nice of her. How nice of her. So I checked the futons. It sounds like a cliche from a detective drama, but they were still warm. I proceeded to smell the pillows. The lingering sense of Karen and Skihi wafted from the pillow of one futon, and the lingering scent of Kombaru came from the pillow of the other futon. So the three of them really were here until moments ago. Aragi, that is weird. That is weird. That you like remember those jokes they would make back in Bake about Aragi being able to recognize like women based off their hip shape? I feel like this is weirder than that, right? And like being able to smell the pillows and tell that they're like that's just strange. So at least Kombaru got a room all cleaned up, right? Of course she had to, I suppose. So Ononoki, God, yeah, this is the shot I was talking about. Her face, her eyes, God, man. Ononoki points out this little clue, I suppose. A crane. What does a paper crane mean? Oh God, I don't know. The kidnapping is only the means, and it means there's more to it. That guy likes doing stuff like that magic trick. He's a guy that likes surprising people with malicious intent. How awesome, how great, how amazing. Ononoki knows him, right? I wonder what Ononoki's like relationship to him is in any way, because I feel like the attitudes the specialists, I mean, have towards her are interesting. Like Guy Nizuko, like remember how weird Guy Nizuko was being with her, like having her sit on her lap and stuff, like when Hachikuji was disappearing. Kaganui, it feels like views her as more of like a person almost. And this guy is said to be a doll master, and obviously this is called Yotsugi doll. Ononoki is in some way like a doll, I suppose. Yeah. Pretty straightforward. A bird. Shape of a bird. Yeah, yeah. Araragi Skihi. Hiyori Tadatsuru, a doll master. And there's a bunch of like stuff about triangles and like I sign Tadatsuru. Uh Yoduru? Should that be Yojuru? Like, yeah, cosine. Oh, Yatsugi, cotangent. Okay. It's like triangle. Sure. Interesting. They all make up a huh. Okay. Okay. Yeah, he specializes in more elaborations. He kidnapped his. Yes, 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 yes. He tends to act on grudges. He's a softie when it comes to work. Why would he have a grudge, right? Hmm. Can't deal with this. With your vampire powers, things aren't going to go like they usually do. You need to engrave that in your heart. What do we mean by the way they usually go? I feel like Aragi could perceive that in a different way. I don't know. I don't know. In the first place, I had the goal of sealing away Shinobu's powers back in spring break, and that's wait, oops, I skipped that. And that's why I wanted a solution like that, right? Yeah, back in Kizu. But before I knew it, I used Shinobu's power to solve things, right? Like a power he feels like he doesn't deserve to be able to use, right? That's why he feels like he has to pay this compensation, right? And I think it extends more than just like Shinobu, right? I guess it's just I think he feels like he doesn't deserve to have like changed as a person. He doesn't like whatever happiness he feels like he has in his life, like his relationship with Shinjo Kahara, his relationship with Hajikuchi, clearly he felt like he didn't deserve. All of this, right? It's all stuff he feels like he doesn't deserve. It's a power that he thinks he's borrowing. Yeah, it's a temporary power, right? Yeah. It may be natural that I would receive one divine punishment after another with this. Yeah, yeah. And I guess is that how he views the whole past 6 months, right? I suppose ever since Hajikuchi's disappearance, probably, right? That's what it seems like it lines up with, you know? Huh. God, so many shots of Inoki's face. Man. She really God. You can tell that they had some money and some time for this arc, right? The timing is too perfect for this to be divine punishment. I suppose when the timing is too perfect, if it really isn't just a coincidence, and it's most likely the doing of some person. Yeah, yeah. The doings of a human. On the day you can't see your reflection anymore, in other words, the day your metamorphosis made you more vampire than human, your underclassmen and your little sisters were assaulted by someone I know. Yeah, way too many coincidences at once. It's like it has to be a plan. It feels like it has to be, right? It has to be a plan, you know? All the things he's built up and hidden away, all crashing down on him. Yeah, yeah. Ononoki-chan's story, maybe that was the story of the darkness the other day. Right, that story is the embodiment of what I hid away. Hajikuji, right? Was there a line between there? Or is he... I don't, yeah, the story about Hajikuji Mayoi. I guess that's like the Jenga brick, I guess, right? That's the one he pulled out that made everything else crash down. Makes sense. Makes sense to me. Yeah. Hmm. And yeah, and he asked her about justice. Yes, about whether or not he would be someone that would be judging him, I suppose. But he's not. He's not at all, right? He cares about aesthetics, which like what does that even mean? Aesthetic curiosity, the sensibility to think that it's the things God didn't create that are beautiful. Someone with the sensibility to think that man-made existences called aberrations are beautiful. Someone who thinks he's an artist, and that's where his softness comes in. In that aspect, he doesn't have ideals, but instead some obsession. An obsession with immortal aberrations, perhaps? Very interesting. I feel like what's interesting is you could almost apply that to Aragi too, right? That his ideals, his ideas of right and wrong, crosses over into like an obsession in some sense, more so, you know? Hmm. It's not like defeating them, but more like mediating here and there. A mediator, a middleman. This Tadatsuru guy sounds like the perfect specialist, does he? Interesting. Don't drown. Narcissism. Shouldn't drown yourself in a tragic situation. The background here with Ononoki and Shinobu playing Snowball, like how do they, God, how do they do this? All that happened is some weirdo kidnapped your two little sisters and your underclassmen. Yeah, yeah. I guess she explains all this, saying it's almost like him drowning in narcissism to even view it in the way he's been viewing it. Right? Very interesting. I think that is very true. Right? For him, it kind of undermines the very basis of his idea of there being like this fundamental like objectivity and this divine punishment he should be facing. You know? Yeah. Okay. I think we have basically covered everything. I just really need to see where this is gonna go. With Tadatsuru. I don't know. And what lesson Aragi is gonna learn from it that he has such a negative view of from the first episode. So I don't know. I'm very excited. I'm very excited for the finale. Hard to believe we're already like gonna be done with the arc, but like oh well, 4 episode arc just feels short now after Hitagi end, right? Man. Okay. I guess that is it. That is it. So please, if you enjoy my videos, subscribe, leave a comment, tell me what you think, and I will see you in the next one.